So I like to bring up this point. You guys ever heard of the name Jeffrey Epstein?
Of course.
Was he a good representative of Jewish morals and faith?
I lean towards no.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely lean towards no.
But if I looked at him and the other Jews that behaved like him in the world as my reference to Tanakh and to faith, that would be
of course.
Inaccurate.
Of course. I mean, there's obviously going to be outliers in every religion.
Exactly. So as the Crusades and the Inquisition and the Holocaust, although they were tragic and horribly wicked and painful, we don't see that as representing Jesus at all.
I think everything more recently with October 7th and whatnot has brought us closer to our religion, I think, individually.
That's really great that you said that, because a lot of people are being led away from God because they feel like, where was he? And same question that people had with the Holocaust.
Yeah, of course.
Where was he? Do you feel closer or farther?
I'm questioning more how good things can happen to bad people.
Right.
To be honest, that's why both of us has come to Israel.
Really?
Not recently, since October 7th, maybe 5 or 6 times.
From where?
From London.
London?
And I think I've doubled the amount of times I've come to Israel just in the past year.
Because you feel a solidarity with our people?
Solidarity with the people, with the country.
Yeah.
I feel like it's my duty to inform people of what's actually happened here back in London.
You guys know some things about Jesus?
Yeah.
Who do you think he came for?
Suppose his efforts would have been for everyone across the board to spread his messaging and his.
Really? Wow, that's great.
That would be my assumption.
Okay. It's a good guess.
Yeah, I would agree. I think being a Jew as well, he probably had messages for the Jewish people. Not that I know what they are.
Yeah. I appreciate your honesty. And so we have billions of Christians or non-Jewish believers in Jesus all around the world that believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob because of who?
Because of Jesus.
Jesus, right. Yeah, who was Jewish, who was born in Bethlehem. And according to Rashi, you guys familiar with Rashi?
Rabbi Rashi?
Yeah, right. You know where he said the Messiah is supposed to come out of? Messiah ben David?
No, I don't know.
Bethlehem.
Okay.
Who's the only person in history that's come out of Bethlehem saying, I am the Messiah, I am he?
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, yeah. So I will show you by my works, but not only that, because of the transformed hearts of the people around the world over the course of history, and the fact that the billions of non-Jewish people are putting their faith and trust in the God of Israel, says something about his testimony to the world. Have you guys ever read the New Testament before?
We haven't read the Old Testament.
That's fair, because...
And unfortunately in the Jewish school, we actually talk about this sometimes, that we're not exposed necessarily enough to the New Testament or other religious texts.
I agree. I think we should know our scriptures more, because if we knew our Old Testament more, if we knew our Tanakh more, we would be able to see how it points to a specific person that's supposed to come at a specific time and from a specific place, doing specific things. And then upon his second coming, he's supposed to fulfill the rest. So a lot of religious Jews that we talk to will say, he hasn't fulfilled prophecy. He hasn't regathered the exiles. He hasn't brought the knowledge of the Torah. He hasn't brought world peace. I agree. He hasn't. But is he supposed to do that on his first and only coming? But see, in religious Judaism, they have room for 2 messiahs. Have you heard of that? Messiah ben Yosef and Messiah ben David? No. Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 to 27. There's a timeline by which the Messiah is supposed to come, be cut off, killed as an atonement, and initiate the messianic era.
Okay.
And that's supposed to be before 70 AD. That's the timeline.
Align with the...
For when the Messiah is supposed to come, be killed as an atonement the first time.
First time.
So Jesus' ministry was in the 30s. And he died, and he gave his life as a ransom for many. That's what he says. He gave his own life to reconcile us to God. So do you know what I mean by it? Do you get the concept?
So are you saying we're in the messianic era right now?
We're in the growth of the messianic era, meaning the gospel is going out to the world, and people are putting their faith in God's new covenant that was promised to us in the book of Jeremiah. So don't believe me, I'm just saying, go into our own scriptures and find these things for yourselves. The book of Jeremiah prophesies a new covenant where God will forgive the sins of the people. And he does that through the sacrifice of his only son, God in the flesh, that came to die for our sins as an atonement. And by putting our faith in him, his righteousness is placed upon us, and God sees his righteousness on us when we pass from this life to the next life, and then we're reconciled to God and we can live for eternity with no pain and no suffering. So I'm offering that to you because it's our Jewish concept from our Jewish Messiah that fulfilled the first round, and it will come to fulfill the rest.
What is your reaction when you say this to religious people?
It depends, because some are very open
Okay.
and some are interested. Like, wow, I've never heard this before. And some are like, it can't be, there's another explanation. There must be another explanation. And I usually ask why. Why does there need to be another explanation? Because Christians and Catholics persecuted us. So I like to bring up this point. You guys ever heard of the name Jeffrey Epstein?
Of course.
Okay, Jewish, right?
Yeah.
Was he a good representative of Jewish morals and faith?
I lean towards no.
Okay, so
Yeah,
no,
definitely
right?
lean towards no.
But if I looked at him and the other Jews that behaved like him in the world, and the ones that steal, the ones that monopolize, the ones that take advantage of people, as my reference to Tanakh and to faith, that would be
Of course.
inaccurate.
Of course. I mean, there's obviously going to be outliers in every religion who don't follow the path of that religion.
Exactly.
We shouldn't take those as the pathway.
Exactly. So as the Crusades and the Inquisition and the Holocaust, although they were tragic and horribly wicked and painful, we don't see that as representing Jesus at all.
Sure.
Because if you look in the New Testament, you'd see that he would be telling you to love your enemies, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, forgive your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you. And also, he believed in the Old Testament and the 10 Commandments. He came from the place he was supposed to come for, to be Messiah.
Sure.
He came on time to be Messiah. He died as an atonement and was resurrected on the third day. If those things are true, could it be that many of our Jewish people have missed our Messiah?
Potentially. I think it boils down to if, and that's where people's questions are going to lie. And people died for Jesus Christ, obviously. So that's where my understanding is of why the belief system is there, is just translating that belief across the current generation, because people believe what they see, not what they hear.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
I do. Yeah.
But isn't the coming of the Messiah meant to bring world peace? Or are you
is.
saying? So
It is, but it doesn't happen magically.
Okay.
Like, it doesn't happen like,
Over time.
boom, we're all peaceful.
Yeah.
Because there's different kinds of peace in the world, right? There's peace between man and man, which is usually imposed.
Okay.
Meaning, why aren't Egypt and Israel fighting a war right now?
Sure.
Because there's imposed peace. You know, they don't want us to necessarily be here, but they're not attacking us. So there's imposed peace. But there's also a real peace that happens between man and God. And when you have peace when you're reconciled to God, and when you have peace between man and God, you can actually have peace between man and man, because you're operating from a completely different heart and mindset. So when you're disconnected from God and you're living a life that's separate from him, you will do things on purpose and even for pleasure that hurt other people. You know what I mean? Sometimes you don't intend to hurt somebody,
Of course.
Right.
but we do anyway.
Yeah.
In the world, let's say he is the Messiah.
Yeah.
Why would we have missed it for so long?
That's a really, really good question. And I appreciate that question. There's a certain pride in the human heart that doesn't want us to say he did it. We want to say that I did it. I achieved the goal. I made myself right with God by doing all the good works that I did in my life, not taking into consideration what I did wrong. Now, a lot of Jewish people have accepted him, but a lot of Jewish people haven't. Same thing with the world. But it's actually prophesied that our Jewish people will have eyes not to see and ears not to hear. And by that, the message will go out to the rest of the world, but it will return to our Jewish people and we will accept it. That's prophesied in our Hebrew scriptures,
Okay.
that it'll go out and come back.
Were you raised
And
with this belief system?
No, the
Grow
opposite.
into it.
The opposite.
How did you get introduced to this sort of way of thinking? Because as a Jew,
Yeah.
it's not the norm.
Yeah, I grew up just like you guys. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Did you guys go to synagogue?
Yeah.
Temple? Yeah.
Yeah.
Bar mitzvah?
Yeah.
Me too. Sometimes Shabbat?
Recently, a bit more.
Right. Me too. But I was living for myself. I was living to satisfy my own pleasure and gratification. And what that led me into through New Age spirituality and meditation and yoga and all that kind of stuff, led me into a very, very dark place where I was completely separating myself from my wife and my kids.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, I feel like I'm doing all the right things. I'm being nice. I'm thinking good thoughts. I have a wife and kids, but yet I want to die. What's wrong with me? What's going on? So I really hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if you look through the Tanakh, you're going to see a very specific man by the name of King David. You're familiar with King David? Do you know how much he lamented to God and how depressed he was and how fearful he was?
It's all in Tehillim, isn't it?
It's all in Tehillim. Exactly. It's all in Psalms. If you ever look through that, you'll see how much he cried to God and he begged for peace and forgiveness. He begged God to protect him and save him because he's scared. People are hunting him. And so he's in this bottomless pit of darkness and he continues to cry out to God. So when I was in my bottomless pit of darkness, I cried out to God and he gave me Jesus. Jesus started to reveal himself. I started having experiences that were related to him everywhere I went. Forward, backward, left, right. I would see him everywhere, in a person, in a book, in a conversation, in a TV show. And something was changing in me, but I wasn't doing it myself. I hadn't read the Old Testament yet, and I hadn't read the New Testament yet. And nobody was telling me to believe in Jesus. And after 20 years of depression and fear, all of a sudden I started feeling like I was coming back to life. And I couldn't explain why, but the only thing that had changed was the fact that Yeshua was appearing in my life.
Amazing.
But it was happening to my wife and my older son at the same time separately.
But was that spoken about, or was it all individual experiences?
Individual experiences. And so we would come home and talk about them. And then one day I was invited to church. And I said, you know what? I'm a Jewish guy. I don't care. I want to die. I'll go. I'll see what they have to say. I went to church and they were speaking about how Jesus was on a mountain here in Israel talking to Elijah and Moses. And I was like, wait a second, what are these guys doing over on this side of the book? Because they're reading from the New Testament. I'm like, I know that the Tanakh talks about Moses and Elijah, even though I haven't read it before.
Without the mention of Jesus.
Yeah, but what are they doing here talking to him? When the pastor got to the point where a voice comes out of the cloud and he's talking about Jesus and said, this is my son who I love, listen to him. For some reason, I knew that to be true. I went home and I told my wife, I said, honey, I think this is the truth that we've been looking for. I said, but this is weird. We're Jewish. What do we do about this? You know, we have no context. Once we recognized who Jesus was, that he is the truth, all of that fell off me. So I had a miracle that happened in my life where, from being depressed and suicidal, the very next day, not only was I full of life and up on my feet, I couldn't swear anymore. I couldn't lust after other women at the gym anymore. I was married. And I started reading scripture like crazy.
What's interesting is I feel like people think there's a big confliction between Judaism and Christianity, but you seem to have found a middle ground where your Judaism fit in with your newfound
Yes and no.
belief system.
That's a bright point, but I would say you're right with regards to modern day religious Judaism.
Okay.
There is no connection between Jesus and modern day. But King David and Abraham and Jacob and Isaac and our forefathers would have recognized my faith because they believed God.
Okay.
They didn't follow the Talmud. They didn't have it.
Of course.
You could say that they had the oral Torah, but
their lives became our scriptures, so of course they didn't have scriptures necessarily follow.
right. But they were following God's guidance.
Of course.
And they believed God even when they committed adultery,
Sure.
even when they committed murder. They still believed in God and it was counted to them as righteousness. And so when God's saying, okay, I'm sending my son to die on your behalf so that we can be reunited, so all those animals that you've been killing for the last however many thousand years don't have to die anymore, this is the once and for all. And if you believe me, like your forefathers did, the righteousness is placed upon you again and we are reunited. And that's why we deliver this message, because it's a Jewish message that went out to the world to bring the Gentiles in, not us to go out. You look like you have more questions.
So do you think then the second coming of the Messiah in the next however many years is not happening, and it has already happened in 70 AD?
He came the first coming.
Okay.
So we didn't miss the second coming.
Okay.
So there's still a chance,
Okay.
right? And so he fulfilled what he needed to fulfill on the first coming to initiate the messianic age, where the message goes out to the world, and then billions of people come to faith in the real, true one God
Okay.
that we believe in. We don't believe in multiple gods.
That's what confuses me, because
Yeah.
Jesus, there's God.
Right.
Are they the same? Are they separate?
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
what kind
it's
of...
only confusing because we as Jews don't know our history and we don't know the scriptures.
Sure.
And we don't know the philosophy that was in the Second Temple period. The fact that the plurality of God was a pre-Christian concept because it's in our texts.
Sure.
If you look through Genesis, if you look through Exodus, the book of Judges, you see God in heaven that you can't see. You see a God that is invisible, that you can't see. If you saw him, you would die. But then there's a visible God suddenly. One that's wrestling with Jacob, one that's eating with Abraham, speaking in the first person as God, and who's being called Yud-He-Vav-He, Yahweh, the Tetragrammaton. And you see the part where Moses and 70 elders and his brother Aaron, they go up on the mountain, they see the God of Israel. And you have the prophet Isaiah, who says he was afraid that he was going to die because he saw God with his own eyes. So they have these, what we call theophanies in the Old Testament, that actually fit more with the concept of Messianic Judaism or Christianity than they do with religious Judaism today, that says God is a singularity. So Aaron, would you say that you are mind only,
No.
spirit only,
No.
Body only.
No, and I know where you're getting to with this, which is interesting.
Right. It's a concept that is rational.
Sure.
And we see it in our day-to-day life. But yet, religious Judaism today has squeezed God into a singularity, only spirit. We're actually more complex than God is. After messianic Judaism started to spread, Christianity, I guess you could call it, the dispersion happened. Jews were displaced all over the world, and they had to find ways to keep Jewish communities together. And so instead of the temple system being the main focus on how to be right with God, they instituted little temples, little synagogues everywhere to keep Jewish culture and Jewish identity going.
Right.
But then rabbis came back from Babylon with information that was codified into what we call the Talmud. And the Talmud was codified and completed in 500 to 600 AD. Even the Mishnah, 200 AD. So these main Jewish pieces of literature are post-Christianity. And so in order to make it pre-Christianity, they say it was delivered orally.
Yeah.
For 1,000 years or 1,400 years, orally, unbroken. And that's how we know. Now, one of the biggest arguments that we get as Jewish believers in Jesus is, well, your scriptures were written 40 to 70 years after the fact. And I like to say, well, your scriptures were written 1,400 years after the fact. So in terms of religious Judaism, you guys are way off the mark. You're not keeping Torah in terms of religious Judaism. I'm not insulting you in it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Like I said before, don't take my word for it, because it's all in our scriptures.
You know what? I mean, the past 2 years, I've realized I need to just ask as many questions as possible, and I have a duty to know the truth and know our scriptures, and that's my goal this year and next year. I'm going to Jerusalem in September with that purpose.
Wow. Are you going to go into yeshiva?
That's the plan.
Wow.
So
you know what? I encourage you to do that. Not because you'll find their truth, but you'll understand what our Jewish people are doing today, why we believe what we believe today. And if you read the Old Testament, the Tanakh, before you go into yeshiva, you're going to have a lot of questions. And I hope you ask those questions.
Of course.
And I encourage you to study and learn and keep your mind open. But I also encourage you to keep your mind open to Yeshua. Because I believe that some of our Jewish people didn't miss him, because God said in our Hebrew scriptures that there will always be a remnant who follow God. But the majority of our people did miss him. But the gospel is now coming back to Israel and to the Jewish people. I want to give you guys the New Testament. Okay. I'm not saying you have to read it. But what I'm saying is, it's in English, right?
Sure.
If you want to ask questions, and if your mind is open to learning and studying as much as you possibly can, read the Tanakh, read the New Testament, and then go into yeshiva and see what works. Okay. See how it fits together.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
But they're both the same. This one actually, I think, has the Psalms in it. So he got the better deal, so.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
God bless you.
You too, mate.
God bless you, bro. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much.
Good luck with everything. Cheers.
Yeah, you too. So that conversation really touched my heart. And these conversations that we have with people, they're not always easy, but we feel that people need to hear the message of God and his love for them, regardless if they accept it or reject it, because if it's in there, we're planting seeds, and those seeds can be watered and grown over time. Do we wish that these people would give their life to Jesus right here and right now? Yes, and sometimes it happens. But we can still continue to pray for these people. So pray for the guys and the people that we spoke to today. And if you like this kind of content, give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. We have a playlist with amazing testimonies of Jewish believers in Jesus. We're going to link that too in this video. Thanks for watching. God bless and take care. Leave your comments.